Ancient civilizations maintained secret connections across impossible distances. For thousands of years, hidden corridors moved goods, ideas, and innovations between cultures that history claims were isolated. By the end of our journey, you will understand how these 30 forgotten pathways secretly built the foundations of our modern world. How did entire belief systems travel across vast deserts without leaving a trace? What kept these intricate networks concealed from empires and kings for centuries? What does it reveal about our own world that the deepest human connections have always existed just out of sight? These hidden corridors represent one of history's most ingenious inventions, a system of connection that defied the very concept of borders. They were not simple roads or marked trails, but intricate, adaptable networks. Think of them not as a single highway, but as a sprawling web of capillaries, moving the lifeblood of culture and innovation between the great hearts of ancient civilizations. While official trade routes like the Silk Road carried sanctioned goods under the watchful eyes of empires and tax collectors, these clandestine corridors operated in the shadows. They facilitated the movement of something far more valuable and volatile: ideas. A revolutionary method for forging bronze could travel from the workshops of Mesopotamia to the smiths of the Indus Valley, not through royal decrees, but along these quiet, unofficial channels. A spiritual belief or an artistic motif could cross mountains and deserts, passed from one community to the next, subtly transforming entire regions without any official record. The corridors themselves were masterpieces of practical geography. Some were natural, like a chain of hidden oases across a desert, known only to a select few guides. Others were repurposed human creations, like the vast underground tunnels called qanats, built for water but secretly used for movement and communication. This system allowed for a pure form of cultural exchange, unfiltered by palace politics or religious dogma. It was a silent conversation between civilizations, proving that human curiosity and the drive to share knowledge have always found a way. This brings us to the first of these secret pathways, a route so vital it shaped the destiny of two powerful lands. The first of these hidden corridors carried a piece of captured sunlight across a continent. The Amber Road was a river of gold, not mined from the earth but harvested from the sea. For centuries, northern tribes collected this fossilized resin along the Baltic coast, where waves washed it ashore like golden pebbles. But how did this treasure of the cold north find its way into the warm hands of Roman aristocrats, and astonishingly, even into the burial vaults of Egyptian pharaohs? The route was not a single road but a chain of trust, a series of secret handoffs through dark forests and along silent river valleys. These paths were carefully chosen to bypass the territories of warring tribes and the watchtowers of empires. Local guides knew every fork in the trail, every safe crossing point, never mapping their knowledge for outsiders. This was a system built on discretion, where the origin of the amber was deliberately obscured to maintain a monopoly. A merchant in Rome might pay a fortune for a piece of this northern gold, having no idea which specific shore it came from, or the countless hands that had carried it south. But the Amber Road was far more than a conduit for a beautiful stone. Moving north along these same hidden trails came revolutionary ideas, techniques for forging stronger iron and new methods for cultivating crops traveled back to the Baltic communities, exchanged in the same quiet transactions as the amber itself. This corridor thrived precisely because it was invisible to the powers of the age. Even when Rome clashed with Germanic tribes, the trade in amber and knowledge never truly ceased, flowing like an underground river beneath the battles on the surface. This proof that connection could flourish in the shadows leads us to another kind of hidden network, one that turned the most barren landscapes into corridors of life. Beneath the scorching sun of the Persian desert, an entire civilization was moving underground. While the surface world baked under an unrelenting heat, a hidden network of tunnels called qanats provided not just life-giving water, but also a secret highway for an empire. These were not simple holes in the ground. They were masterpieces of ancient engineering begun over 3,000 years ago. Skilled builders would first locate a water source trapped deep within a mountain. Then, with astonishing precision, they would dig a long, gently sloping tunnel all the way to a settlement in the arid plains. The slope was everything. It had to be just steep enough to let the water flow by gravity alone, yet shallow enough to prevent the tunnel from collapsing. The excavated soil was piled in a continuous line of mounds on the surface, creating a landscape that whispered of the hidden river flowing below. But the true secret of the qanats went far beyond water. Their cool, dark interiors became perfect concealed corridors. A merchant carrying precious spices could travel for dozens of kilometers completely unseen, safe from the brutal desert heat and the ever-present threat of bandits. Messengers with vital information for the empire used these tunnels to move between distant provinces without leaving a trace on the surface. The qanats were a labyrinth, a maze intentionally confusing to any outsider who stumbled in. A pursuer would quickly find themselves disoriented in the absolute darkness, while those who knew the way moved with purpose. Historical records suggest that Zoroastrian priests, facing pressure from other faiths, used these subterranean passages to travel between communities and share their teachings in secret. The system was so effective because it was built for survival. Ventilation shafts, originally dug to provide air for the construction crews, now allowed for safe travel through even the longest tunnels, some stretching for more than 50 kilometers. This hidden infrastructure was the silent nervous system of the Persian Empire, allowing it to coordinate and communicate across vast distances without its enemies ever knowing. The brilliant engineering concept itself began to travel, moving silently from Persia to North Africa and as far east as China. From the world beneath the desert, our journey now climbs to the highest and most unexpected corridors of all, the soaring pathways of the mountains. The world's highest mountains were not walls but doorways. While the grand caravan routes of the Silk Road are celebrated in history, a parallel network of secret corridors snaked through the heart of the Himalayas. These were not roads for merchants with laden camels, but narrow, vertigo-inducing trails known only to a handful of local guides and determined Buddhist monks. They followed the logic of the land itself, tracing the paths of furious river gorges and scaling passes so high the air was thin and the wind screamed. To attempt these routes was to gamble with your life, requiring an intimate understanding of seasonal weather, the precise timing to cross a pass between snowfalls, and the hidden signs of an impending avalanche. This very inaccessibility was their shield, making them invisible to the tax collectors and border guards of the empires below. These high-altitude corridors became a clandestine highway for the mind. Buddhist monks carrying precious bundles of palm leaf manuscripts moved between the great monastic universities of India and the imperial courts of China. They transported entire libraries of philosophy and religion, not on the open road but through this silent, sky-high world. Recent discoveries in remote Himalayan caves confirm this secret trade, with ancient texts preserved for centuries in the dry, cold air, far from the conflicts of the lowlands. But the exchange was not one way. Along these same treacherous paths came revolutionary medical knowledge, rare Himalayan herbs prized for their healing properties, found their way to distant markets, while the intricate principles of Chinese acupuncture traveled westward, passed from one healer to the next through these mountain corridors. This demonstrates a profound truth that the most formidable geographical barriers could become the most secure connectors. The isolation of the Himalayan valleys was not absolute, it was curated. These hidden pathways allowed for a selective, deliberate cultural exchange, ensuring that traditions could be preserved in their mountain sanctuaries while still absorbing vital new ideas from the outside world. The survival of unique languages, art forms, and spiritual practices in these valleys is a direct legacy of these secret sky roads. From these majestic, airy pathways, our search for connection now plunges into the silent, sunless world beneath the ocean waves. While empires taxed every barrel of water in crowded ports, a secret wellspring flowed in plain sight, hidden beneath the waves. The Mediterranean Sea, a crossroads of ancient trade, held a clandestine resupply network known only to a select few mariners. Submarine freshwater springs bursting from the seafloor along forgotten coastlines created invisible oases for Phoenician and Greek ships. A captain could guide his vessel to a precise, unmarked location, lower a bucket overboard, and haul up pure, sweet water without ever sighting land. This was the ultimate maritime secret, a way to bypass the watchful eyes of port authorities and the heavy taxes they imposed on every essential resource. The knowledge of these springs was more valuable than any cargo, a treasure passed only from a seasoned captain to his most trusted successor. To protect this advantage, sailors would weave elaborate lies, spreading tales of dangerous reefs or vengeful sea spirits near the actual springs, while quietly directing rivals toward barren, salty coasts. This subterfuge transformed the Mediterranean into a chessboard of hidden moves and countermoves, all playing out across its deceptively open waters. These secret watering holes did more than just quench thirst. They enabled voyages that reshaped the ancient world. A ship no longer needed to cling to the shoreline, making constant, expensive stops. It could now strike out across open sea, traveling directly from the coast of Lebanon to the shores of Sicily or Sardinia, its crew confident they could replenish their most vital supply far from any prying eyes. Furthermore, these springs became neutral grounds, unofficial meeting points where merchants from rival cities could exchange goods and information without official oversight. A Phoenician trader might pass a sample of a new dye to a Greek counterpart, or share a navigational chart detailing a newly discovered Atlantic current, all while their ships floated above the gushing heart of a freshwater spring. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as the tall tales of old sailors, but modern oceanography has proven the legends true. Sophisticated surveys have mapped numerous freshwater vents along the Mediterranean seafloor, precisely where the ancient texts suggested they would be. This hidden hydrological corridor demonstrates a brilliant adaptation, where humans learned to read the natural world so intimately they could uncover its most closely held secrets. From this network of secrets beneath the sea, our journey now descends into a labyrinth of human creation, a corridor carved through solid rock. The desert city of Petra presented a magnificent deception to the world. While travelers approached through the grand, towering sick to be awed by the treasury facade, a completely separate network of hidden gorges and tunnels snaked through the surrounding mountains. These were the city's backdoor passages, a clandestine system designed to move goods and people while completely bypassing the official gates and their heavy taxes. Caravans laden with frankincense and myrrh could be guided through these secret corridors by trusted Nabatean scouts, avoiding the watchful eyes of tax collectors and the regulations that governed the main entrances. The paths themselves were masterpieces of concealed engineering, narrow winding canyons known only to a select few. these guides could navigate the labyrinthine routes in pitch darkness, their knowledge a carefully guarded secret passed down through generations. Archaeological surveys of these alternative sites reveal they were far from natural, random paths. Engineers had carved discreet footholds into the sheer rock walls and installed sophisticated water channels to support both the merchants and their animals on these long, clandestine journeys. This hidden infrastructure allowed Petra to thrive even during times of siege or political conflict with powerful neighbors like the Romans. While official trade might be blockaded or taxed into oblivion, the city's economic lifeblood continued to flow silently through its mountain veins. These corridors also served a deeper purpose, facilitating the movement of religious pilgrims between sacred sites in Arabia and bustling Mediterranean ports. Entire communities could travel in secret, their spiritual journeys protected from interference. The existence of these pathways reveals the true genius of the Nabateans. Their power was not just in the magnificent structures they carved from stone, but in their profound understanding of the desert itself. They learned to leverage the terrain, turning the most imposing and impassable landscapes into their most secure economic advantage. From this city of hidden doors carved in rose-red stone, we find another form of secret passage, one that moved not through rock, but across the shifting sands of the Sahara. Where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers slow and spill across the land, an entire world of water and reeds concealed a civilization on the move. The vast Mesopotamian marshes were not a barrier but a secret aquatic corridor, a labyrinth of hidden waterways navigated for millennia by the Madden people, known as the Marsh Arabs. From the air, this landscape appeared as an impenetrable green maze, but to those who knew its secrets, it was a high-speed highway connecting the heart of ancient Mesopotamia directly to the Persian Gulf. The Madden crafted a unique vessel for this environment, the Tarada, a long, slender canoe made entirely of reeds, with a shallow draft perfect for the marsh's channels. These silent boats could glide through the densest reed beds, carrying goods and people completely unseen from the established land routes just a few kilometers away. A shipment of dates from a Babylonian palm grove could be transferred to a Gulf trader's how without ever passing a single imperial tax official. Throughout history, these waterways became a legendary refuge. When empires cracked down on rebellion or religious dissent, the marshes offered a perfect sanctuary. From Babylonian times through the rise and fall of the Islamic caliphates, rebels and reformers vanished into this watery labyrinth, protected by the Madden and the sheer impossibility of the terrain for any outsider. The corridors did more than hide people, they blended cultures. Here, in the floating villages, the traditions of desert Bedouins met the seafaring knowledge of Gulf merchants. You could find the geometric patterns of tribal weaving alongside the distinct maritime knots used by ocean sailors, a unique fusion born from this hidden crossroads. For centuries, the full scale of this network was pure speculation, but modern satellite imagery has peeled back the reeds to reveal the truth. The photographs show a staggering web of ancient channels, a comprehensive transportation system etched into the landscape, confirming the historical accounts of a secret aquatic world. This was a corridor built not from stone or road, but from profound environmental wisdom, proving that the deepest human connections can be woven into the very fabric of a place. From the labyrinth of water and reeds, our search for hidden corridors pushes next into the dense, living walls of the jungle. Deep within the emerald heart of the Maya jungle, a network of ghostly white lines connected worlds. Beyond the famous stone causeways that linked city centers, a second, more secretive system existed, the Sacbeob Sac, the White Roads, crafted not from rough stone but from crushed, packed limestone. These pathways gleamed under the moon, visible only to those who knew where to look. They were not for merchants or armies. These bright lines were reserved for the keepers of knowledge, the priests, the healers, and the swift messengers who carried the intellectual lifeblood of Maya civilization. While rival city-states might be locked in conflict, these secret corridors allowed a different kind of conversation to continue uninterrupted. A healer from Tikal could travel a white road to Palinc, exchanging a newly discovered medicinal plant for an advanced method of charting the path of Venus. A ritual to appease the rain god perfected in one city could be shared with another facing a terrible drought, all without the local ruler ever knowing the source. The very material of the road, the brilliant white limestone, served a dual purpose. It was smooth and durable for fast, silent travel, but it also held deep spiritual significance, symbolizing a path of purity and connection to the celestial realm. For centuries, the true extent of this network was a mystery, the jungle having reclaimed nearly every trace. But modern LiDAR technology, which uses laser pulses to see through the dense canopy, has peeled back the green veil. The scans reveal a stunning web of these white roads, linking ceremonial centers and remote shrines that historians once believed were completely isolated. This hidden lattice explains one of the great puzzles of Maya culture: how a consistent artistic style and specific architectural innovations appeared almost simultaneously across the Yucatan Peninsula, despite the region's famous political fragmentation. A new type of temple vault or a complex glyphic pattern could spread from city to city, not through conquest or open trade, but along these clandestine corridors of knowledge. This reveals a profound separation between political power and cultural unity. While kings fought for territory, the intellectual and spiritual community of the Maya maintained its own sovereign network, a republic of the mind connected by roads of crushed white stone. It proves that the deepest human bonds, those of shared belief and knowledge, can create corridors that no border can ever truly close. This concept of a continent-spanning intellectual network finds a stunning parallel far across the ocean, in the vast deserts of another hemisphere. A continent severed by rising seas did not sever its people. The Bering Land Bridge may have vanished beneath the waves over 10,000 years ago, but the communities it once connected never truly lost touch. Across the newly formed strait, a secret network of ice corridors and island chains became a new kind of bridge, one maintained not by rock and soil, but by the profound environmental wisdom of the Arctic's indigenous peoples. Siberian Yupik and Alaska native hunters developed routes invisible to the outsider's eye, pathways across the treacherous sea ice known only through generations of accumulated knowledge. They could read the texture of the ice, the direction of the wind, and the behavior of marine mammals to navigate a safe passage between continents. This was not a route for massive migrations, but for sustained, intimate contact. A hunter from what is now Alaska might guide his Umiak, a nimble skin boat, across the frozen seascape to meet with his counterpart in Siberia, not as a stranger, but as a trading partner following an ancient tradition. The goods exchanged were masterpieces of survival technology, elaborate techniques for ivory carving, transforming walrus tusks into intricate art, and essential tools flowed in both directions. Designs for constructing the perfect skin-covered boat capable of riding the icy waves were shared and refined. Most importantly, strategies for surviving the brutal Arctic winter, from the patterns used to sew caribou skin parkas to the knowledge of which plants could prevent scurvy, traveled these hidden corridors. This continuous exchange is etched not only in artifacts but in the very stories of the people. Oral histories from both sides of the Bering Sea tell of regular visits, intermarriage, and shared ceremonial practices. They describe trading festivals held on the ice, where spiritual beliefs and creation stories were exchanged as freely as sealskins and obsidian. For a long time, Western archaeology insisted these continents developed in isolation after the land bridge flooded, dismissing these oral accounts as myth. But science is now catching up to tradition. Recent genetic studies reveal a clear, ongoing flow of genes between Siberian and North American populations, occurring millennia after the continents were supposedly cut off. This hidden northern corridor demonstrates a powerful truth that human connection can defy even the most dramatic geographical changes. When a land bridge sinks beneath the sea, the human spirit simply builds another from knowledge, memory, and ice. From this proof of enduring bonds in the frozen north, our journey descends into a very different kind of hidden world, a corridor of stone and shadow lying directly beneath the feet of medieval Europe. Beneath the polished marble and bustling forums of ancient Rome, an entire city of shadows operated in parallel. A network of Cryptoporticus covered semi-subterranean corridors snaked under the feet of the unsuspecting populace. These were not dank, forgotten tunnels, but wide, vaulted passageways, cool in the summer and dry in the winter, illuminated by cleverly placed light wells. They formed a clandestine circulatory system for the empire's most powerful individuals, linking the basements of the Senate House with the back doors of major temples and the private villas of the elite. A priest of the cult of Mithras could move from a secret initiation ritual directly to a meeting with a provincial governor without ever stepping into the public eye. A quaestor carrying a chest of gold for a covert military operation could transport it across the city completely unseen. This architectural secrecy was a deliberate tool of power. While the common citizen experienced the state through grand public announcements and orchestrated ceremonies, the real machinery of empire often operated through these silent, covered hallways. The design was brilliantly pragmatic. Sophisticated ventilation shafts ensured a constant supply of fresh air, while intricate drainage channels kept the floors bone dry even during Rome's torrential rains. Some corridors were even engineered with acoustic properties, their curved walls and specialized plaster absorbing sound to prevent eavesdropping on the most sensitive conversations. This hidden network allowed for the rapid, unvetted spread of information. A new religious practice from the eastern provinces could be discussed and adopted by the priestly class long before it was presented to the public. Political strategies and scandalous gossip traveled from one end of the city to the other at a speed public messengers could never match, often influencing official policy before a formal decree was ever issued. The legacy of this Roman innovation did not crumble with the empire. Throughout medieval Europe, the same principle reappeared in the form of secret tunnels connecting cathedrals, monasteries, and castles. These later networks, used by monks and nobles alike, served the same fundamental purpose, creating privileged channels that bypassed the normal, visible structures of society. This enduring architectural secret reveals that the flow of power has always preferred the cover of shadows. From this world of hidden movement beneath ancient cities, our search for connection now surfaces to trace a corridor that linked two vast oceans. On the open ocean, the wind itself carved a hidden corridor. Ancient mariners of the Indian Ocean mastered a secret that seemed to defy logic. They learned to ride the breath of the planet. They discovered the relentless, predictable pulse of the monsoon winds, a seasonal reversal that blew from the southwest for 6 months and then from the northeast for the next 6. This was not a route you could mark on a map with a simple line. It was a living, breathing highway that appeared and vanished with the calendar. To harness it required a deep, almost sacred knowledge passed down through generations of sailors. It demanded an intimate understanding of ocean currents that could pull a ship off course and a mastery of celestial navigation, using the stars not as distant lights but as a fixed compass in the night sky. Only the most experienced captains could unlock this seasonal pathway, creating a specialized corridor invisible to land-based empires. The system was one of perfect timing. A ship laden with aromatic spices like cinnamon and pepper would set sail from the coast of India with the southwest monsoon at its back, racing across the ocean to the shores of Arabia or East Africa. There, the traders would wait, sometimes for months, living in temporary communities that sprang up on specific beaches and coves. They exchanged goods, shared stories, and formed bonds until the winds reversed. Then, with the northeast monsoon filling their sails, they would embark on the return journey, their hulls now packed with African gold, ivory, and exotic woods. This created a direct, long-distance exchange between civilizations that otherwise saw each other as distant legends. But the monsoon corridors carried far more than material wealth. They became a river for the flow of faith. Buddhist monks, taking advantage of the same predictable winds, journeyed from the ports of India to the kingdoms of Southeast Asia, carrying their scriptures and philosophies. Centuries later, Muslim merchants from Arabia followed these identical maritime pathways, not only trading goods but also sharing their religious beliefs, which slowly took root in the islands of Indonesia. This was how entire spiritual landscapes were transformed, not through conquest, but through the quiet, persistent traffic of ships guided by the seasonal wind. The sophistication of this ancient science is staggering. These mariners were, in effect, practical meteorologists and oceanographers, reading the natural world with an accuracy that would not be matched in the West for centuries. They turned a cyclical weather pattern into the most reliable long-distance transportation system of the ancient world, a hidden corridor made of air and water. This mastery of the open sea finds a stark contrast in our next destination, where the greatest secrets were found not on the water, but in the absolute darkness of the desert night. The desert at night offered no landmarks, only an ocean of shifting sand. To cross it, the Tuareg and other desert nomads learned to navigate by a different kind of map, one drawn in the stars. They developed hidden corridors across the Sahara that were invisible by day, coming alive only under the vast, dark canopy of the night sky. These were the Saharan star paths, routes defined not by wells or mountains, but by specific celestial formations. A particular alignment of stars might point directly toward a hidden oasis dozens of kilometers away, a secret known only to those initiated into the knowledge. This allowed for movement on a colossal scale, connecting the gold-rich kingdoms of West Africa with the bustling ports of the Mediterranean, all while avoiding the ever-present threats of rival tribes and predatory authorities. The knowledge of these celestial routes was a treasure more valuable than any cargo, guarded with immense secrecy within nomadic tribes. It was passed down through generations in initiation rituals and encoded in secret languages, ensuring that the power to cross the world's largest desert remained in the hands of a select few. This system demonstrates a profound truth, that in a landscape utterly devoid of conventional landmarks, human ingenuity could use the cosmos itself to create a perfectly reliable navigation grid. The star paths were not just theoretical, they were practical highways for a trade that shaped continents. Long before the Great Camel caravans became the standard image of trans-Saharan commerce, goods were moving along these hidden celestial corridors. Salt from the desert's heart, vital for preserving food, traveled south. Gold and ivory from the African interior moved north, reaching Mediterranean markets without a single official record of their journey. For centuries, this was considered speculation, but recent archaeology has provided stunning confirmation. Prehistoric artifacts, tools, and remnants of ancient campsites have been discovered along these hypothetical star-aligned routes, proving their usage stretches back into deep antiquity. The impact of this clandestine exchange was monumental. It was through these star-guided passages that cultural currents flowed in both directions. The intricate musical traditions of West Africa, with their complex polyrhythms, began to influence the music heard in North African courts. Simultaneously, artistic styles and metalworking techniques from the Mediterranean world traveled south, leaving their mark on the artifacts of sub-Saharan civilizations. This was a dialogue between worlds, mediated by nomads who spoke the language of the stars. It reveals that the most featureless barrier on Earth was, in fact, a vibrant, living corridor, its routes etched not in sand but in the night sky. This reliance on waterways for secret movement finds a powerful echo in our next exploration, where entire civilizations were connected by corridors hidden in plain sight within the world's great river systems. Great rivers often have greater secrets. The mighty Mekong presented an obvious highway, its broad, powerful current carrying the official trade of kings and empires. But its true story was written in the whispers of its hidden tributaries, a capillary network of secret waterways that connected civilizations without ever appearing on a royal map. These were not the grand, silt-laden channels, but the quieter streams, the seasonal arteries that swelled with the monsoon rains and then shrank back into the landscape. They formed a clandestine aquatic web linking the isolated mountain communities of Laos and northern Thailand directly with the bustling coastal cities and the grand temple complexes of Cambodia. This system operated in perfect parallel to the official trade, allowing for an exchange that was both intimate and invisible. Local boatmen, born to the rhythm of these waters, held the key. They possessed a granular knowledge of the river's moods, knowing precisely which tributary would be navigable in the dry season and which channel would become a raging torrent after the rains. They knew the secret portage points, the unmarked paths around impassable rapids where they could carry their slender boats overland to the next calm stretch of water. This was a knowledge passed from father to son, a living atlas of the hidden Mekong. What traveled these secret streams was as vital as any royal cargo. Religious artifacts moved with a particular secrecy along these routes. A bronze statue of the Hindu god Shiva, cast in a Khmer workshop near Angkor, could find its way up these hidden waterways to a newly established Buddhist monastery in the highlands of Laos. The journey was not one of conquest, but of subtle cultural dialogue, allowing the intricate cosmology of Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms to blend with the emerging Theravada Buddhist traditions of Thailand and Laos. For decades, the significance of these routes was pure speculation, but modern archaeology has finally illuminated their path. Recent surveys using aerial photography and ground-penetrating radar have uncovered the remains of previously unknown temple sites and small shrines positioned not on the main river, but tucked away along these very tributaries. These were not grand state-sponsored temples, but more intimate places of worship, suggesting they served as way stations and cultural hubs for those using the secret network. This reveals a fundamental truth about how water systems truly connect. The main river is the public face, the official corridor of power, but the hidden tributaries create a second, deeper layer of connection, one that allows for the selective preservation of culture. Isolated communities in the Mekong Basin could use these waterways to maintain their unique linguistic traditions and artistic practices, choosing when to engage with the wider world and when to retreat into their cultural sanctuaries. The river did not just connect everything to everything, it provided a menu of connections, and the most profound exchanges often happened on the quietest routes. This intricate dance of movement and sound finds a strange parallel in our next corridor, where the medium of connection was not water, but the vibration of the air itself. Sound itself became a hidden corridor in the thin air of the high Andes. Indigenous communities there mastered a landscape that seemed designed for silence, turning its very mountains into a vast whispering gallery. They identified specific mountain passes and valleys that acted as natural amplifiers, carving acoustic pathways through the stone. A message whistled from one high ridge could be received with perfect clarity in a settlement many kilometers away, with no runner ever setting foot on a trail. This was not simple shouting, it was a sophisticated technology of sound. They developed a complex whistle language, a form of speech that could replicate the tonal patterns of their native Quechua, allowing for the transmission of detailed information. These whistled phrases were combined with the deep, resonant patterns of drums, creating a layered code that could convey everything from a routine administrative order to a warning of imminent danger. The routes were not random, they were based on a profound understanding of mountain acoustics. Messengers knew that sound traveled differently at dawn than at dusk, that a message sent through a specific pass after a rainfall would carry farther than on a dry, windy day. They used the temperature inversions common in high valleys, where a layer of cold air traps warmer air below, to create a channel that could bounce a sound signal for astonishing distances. Spanish chroniclers wrote with bewilderment of this phenomenon, reporting that news of a rebellion or a harvest seemed to reach the Inca capital at Cusco almost instantly, as if the very wind carried the words. They searched for networks of signal fires or teams of runners and found nothing, completely missing the invisible corridors of sound that connected the empire. This system gave the Inca state a remarkable advantage. An administrator in a remote province could coordinate with the central government without the delay of physical travel, allowing for the management of food stores, labor drafts, and military deployments with an efficiency that confounded their European contemporaries. For a long time, these accounts were dismissed as legend, but modern acoustic science has proven the Andean people right. Researchers using high-quality speakers and microphones have mapped these ancient routes, confirming that the specific topography of certain valleys creates natural sound-focusing channels, effectively turning entire mountains into parabolic dishes. This was a corridor built not from stone or path, but from vibration and air, a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and environmental wisdom. It demonstrates that the most advanced network can be one that leaves no physical trace at all. From these invisible corridors of echoing sound, we find another form of secret language, one woven not from air but from thread. Thread itself became a language in the high Andes. While the sound corridors carried messages across the valleys, an even more permanent and intricate code was being woven in the highland villages. Ancient Andean civilizations developed a hidden corridor of communication built not from paths or sound, but from textiles. To the untrained eye, these were simply beautiful fabrics, but to initiated individuals, each pattern, color, and knot contained a dense volume of information. A single tunic could narrate a community's history, declare a political alliance, or encode advanced astronomical knowledge necessary for planting crops. This was a portable, durable, and deniable information network. A messenger could travel openly through the mountains, his cargo appearing to be simple trade goods, while in reality, he carried a complex treaty or a religious decree woven into the very cloak on his back. The system was brilliantly robust. Unlike a spoken message that could be forgotten or a parchment that could be destroyed by rain, the textile code was resilient. The information was distributed across the entire fabric, so even if a corner was damaged, the core message remained intact. This allowed for the silent, secure transmission of technological secrets. A revolutionary method for terracing mountainsides to prevent erosion or a new technique for smelting copper could be communicated from one valley to the next through a series of specific geometric patterns, shared between master weavers who understood the cipher. The most famous example of this principle is the quipu, a complex assembly of knotted strings. For centuries, these were thought to be simple accounting tools, a primitive form of record-keeping. But recent decipherment efforts have revealed a far more stunning truth. The quipu was a sophisticated three-dimensional writing system. The type of knot, its position on the string, the color of the cord, and the overall structure of the device could encode narrative histories, genealogies, and even philosophical poetry. A quipu keeper, or kipukamayak, was a living librarian trained to read these knotted texts aloud. This meant that vast amounts of data could be transported inconspicuously. A bundle of strings was far less likely to be confiscated or understood by an outsider than a scroll covered in foreign script. The Inca Empire mastered this system to administrate their vast territories. They could integrate newly conquered cultures without forcibly erasing local languages, using the universal language of the Quipu and textile codes to coordinate taxes, labor, and rituals. This created a hidden layer of imperial unity that ran parallel to the official roads and state religion. The profound legacy of these woven corridors is that they are still active today. In remote Andean communities, traditional weaving patterns persist, carrying centuries-old symbolism. A modern weaver might incorporate a pattern that signifies a specific sacred mountain, maintaining a living link to an ancient worldview. This demonstrates a breathtaking concept that a culture's most vital connections can be woven into the very clothes they wear, creating corridors of meaning that endure long after empires have turned to dust. From these intricate pathways of woven thread and knotted string, our search for hidden connection now turns to a corridor built from a substance even more intangible, the silent, fleeting pathways of light. The stones themselves were a language, scattered across the ancient landscapes of Europe, from the windswept coasts of Brittany to the rolling hills of Britain. Megalithic structures like Stonehenge and Karnak were not isolated monuments. They were nodes in a vast, hidden network of astronomical alignment, creating silent corridors of knowledge that connected Neolithic communities across thousands of kilometers. A standing stone in one village and a burial mound in another, though separated by weeks of travel, might be precisely positioned to frame the exact point on the horizon where the sun rises on the winter solstice. This shared celestial grammar created a durable communication system, allowing for the transmission of the most vital information of the age, the secrets of time itself. Calendrical knowledge was the key to survival. Knowing the precise date of the solstices and equinoxes told communities exactly when to plant, when to harvest, and when to move their herds. This was not just practical, it was sacred. The ability to predict the sun's rebirth at the darkest time of year was a power that bound communities together, and this power was shared and verified along the alignment corridors. A traveler from a distant region could arrive at a new stone circle and immediately understand its purpose, reading the sunrise or moonrise against its pillars to confirm the season, creating a shared scientific and spiritual reality. For a long time, archaeologists viewed these sites as local achievements, but modern technology has shattered that view. Sophisticated GPS surveys and laser scanning have revealed astonishing geometric precision. Sites once considered unrelated are now shown to form perfect isosceles triangles over the landscape, or align along ley lines that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. This suggests the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of geography and geometry that allowed them to create a continent-wide web of reference points. The spread of this knowledge required constant, intimate contact. The specific technique for shaping and transporting a 40-ton bluestone, or the complex method for calculating lunar standstills, could not be communicated by chance encounters. These were secrets passed along hidden routes from master builders to apprentices, moving from the Mediterranean northward to Scandinavia and the British Isles. The corridors they traveled are now lost, ancient footpaths and riverways erased by millennia of farming and development. Yet their legacy is encoded in the stones, a testament to a prehistoric world far more connected and intellectually advanced than we ever knew. This silent conversation written in rock and sky finds a parallel in another form of secret communication, one built not from stone but from the very words we speak. A shared secret language echoed across the Mediterranean docks. While empires imposed their official tongues, the real business of the ancient world was conducted in a hidden linguistic corridor known as Sacbeob, a pidgin language born from necessity. This was not the language of kings or poets, but a practical, stripped-down code that allowed a Greek shipmaster, a Berber trader, and a Catalan sailor to negotiate the price of a cargo of olive oil without any of them revealing the intimate details of their native speech. Sacbeob and languages like it formed a clandestine communication network, a verbal shield that protected commercial secrets and sensitive information from the prying ears of port authorities and rival merchants. Its vocabulary was a patchwork, drawn primarily from Italian and Provençal, with pieces of Arabic, Spanish, and Greek woven in, creating a linguistic toolkit that was easy to learn but difficult for outsiders to penetrate. A conversation about weather patterns or political unrest in a distant port could be conducted openly in a crowded tavern, the true meaning of the exchange hidden within the simplified grammar and borrowed words. This system allowed for the rapid flow of market intelligence. News of a shipwreck blocking a key harbor or a sudden surge in demand for Egyptian linen could spread from one end of the sea to the other with astonishing speed, all communicated in this mercantile cipher. The true genius of these pidgin corridors was their flexibility and impermanence. They existed only for the duration of the transaction, leaving no written records for historians or tax collectors to find. A merchant did not need to be fluent. He only needed to master the few hundred words and phrases relevant to his trade, prices, quantities, quality, and directions. This same phenomenon appeared along the Silk Road, where a complex trade jargon blended Persian, Turkish, and Chinese elements to facilitate deals between communities that otherwise shared no common culture. In the bustling ports of Southeast Asia, a market Malay served a similar purpose, enabling trade from the Spice Islands to the coast of Africa. For centuries, these languages were ghosts in the historical record, mentioned in passing by confused travelers but never formally documented. Modern linguists, however, have become detectives of this lost speech. By comparing merchant ledgers, travelogues, and the loanwords that bled into local dialects, they have begun to reconstruct fragments of Sacbeob and its cousins. This research reveals a stunning truth, that some of the most effective corridors of connection were not made of stone or path, but of grammar and sound, engineered for secrecy and speed. They prove that when official channels fail, human ingenuity will always invent a new way to talk. This hidden world of scent and commerce now draws us forward. The true wealth of the incense trade flowed through corridors of pure deception. While Roman historians meticulously documented the grand incense route running up the Arabian Peninsula, a shadow network of alternatives snaked through landscapes deemed impassable. Specialized traders guided their camel caravans not along the main tracks, but through secret desert valleys and razor-thin mountain passes known only to their clans. When the Nabatean kingdom tightened its grip on the primary route or when rival empires clashed, these hidden corridors became the lifeline for the ancient world's most coveted aromatics. Frankincense and myrrh continued their journey to Mediterranean temples and Egyptian burial rites, completely bypassing the official checkpoints and their exorbitant taxes. The locations of these pathways were secrets more valuable than the cargo itself, protected by a web of deliberate misinformation. A trader might boast in a crowded port about a dangerous, bandit-infused route, while quietly directing his own kin along a safe, unknown passage just a day's journey to the east. This required a specialized environmental knowledge that read the desert like a map. They knew which wadis or dry riverbeds would hold pockets of water after a rare rain, and which rock formations created natural windbreaks for secret camps. The goods themselves were not merely luxuries, they were medicines. The antimicrobial properties of frankincense made it vital for treating wounds, while myrrh was a key ingredient in balms and tinctures. This meant the hidden corridors also carried crucial medical knowledge. A healing ritual developed in a Babylonian temple, combining specific aromatics for treating fever, could travel along these secret trails to an Egyptian physician, all without any royal sanction. For a long time, the existence of these routes was just a theory, but archaeology has now found their scent. Excavations in the Negev Desert, far from the known incense route, have uncovered sophisticated incense burners in small, remote caravanserai. These were not grand public buildings, but way stations for those in the know. Even more telling is the persistence of specific ritual practices. The exact same method of burning a particular resin blend during funeral rites appears in cultures from southern Arabia to the Levant, a consistency that could only be maintained through continuous, clandestine contact. This proves that the demand for connection, for shared ritual and healing, could carve pathways through the most formidable deserts, ensuring that even when empires fell, the scent of sacred smoke never faded from the air. Migration routes were the invisible highways of the ancient world. Across the vast steppes of Eurasia and the sprawling savannas of Africa, pastoral nomads followed a hidden clockwork of seasonal movement, tracing corridors known only to them. These were not random wanderings, but precise, cyclical journeys along ancestral pathways that connected summer highlands to winter lowlands. The knowledge required to navigate them was a sacred science passed from elder to youth. It involved memorizing the location of secret springs that flowed only in certain months, recognizing which specific grasses promised the richest grazing, and understanding the exact week a mountain pass would be free of snow yet not swarming with insects. This intricate ecological wisdom allowed entire cultures to move in harmony with the land, creating a living, breathing network that connected distant ecological zones. While agricultural societies were rooted to their fields, these nomadic corridors formed a dynamic web of connections stretching for thousands of kilometers, all while deliberately avoiding the walls and watchtowers of settled populations. The true function of these routes went far beyond feeding herds. They became clandestine channels for some of history's most transformative technologies. The design for the light spoke-wheeled chariot, a vehicle that revolutionized warfare from Egypt to China, did not spread through royal decrees. It traveled along these seasonal trails, passed between nomadic clans who understood its value for speed and mobility. The complex art of crafting the composite bow, layering wood, sinew, and horn to create a weapon more powerful than anything seen before, moved from the Asian steppes to the frontiers of Europe through these same hidden channels. Even the technology of felt making, turning wool into durable, weather-resistant fabric, was a nomadic secret that slowly filtered into settled societies. For a long time, the scale of this exchange was merely a compelling theory, but modern genetics has provided stunning confirmation. Studies of both ancient human remains and the DNA of livestock like sheep and horses reveal a clear pattern. Genes flowed consistently along these hypothetical seasonal corridors, proving that there was not just a trade in ideas, but a continuous, long-distance movement of people and their animals. This created a biological and cultural tapestry woven across continents. The hidden nature of these pathways was their greatest strength. It allowed nomadic societies to maintain their fierce independence, to move their families and flocks away from the control of expanding empires, while still engaging in a deliberate, selective exchange. They could choose when to trade, what to share, and whom to interact with, all from a position of mobility and anonymity. This delicate dance of connection and evasion meant that the most profound cultural currents could flow between worlds that officially knew nothing of each other. From these ancient trails that pulsed with the rhythm of the seasons, our search for hidden connection now descends into the silent, permanent world beneath our feet. Beneath the sunlit world of cities and fields lay a kingdom of absolute darkness and profound connection. Extensive limestone cave systems, carved by water over millions of years, formed a hidden subterranean highway network across continents. These natural tunnels offered a perfect means of moving between valleys or across entire mountain ranges, while remaining completely invisible from the surface. A community could send messengers, conduct trade, or undertake spiritual journeys through the very heart of the earth, their passage shielded from the eyes of rivals and the elements alike. The evidence for this hidden world is painted on the walls themselves. The famous caves of Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain, separated by hundreds of kilometers, share astonishing artistic similarities. The way animals are depicted with their dynamic forms and specific shading techniques suggests more than a shared inspiration. It points to direct contact. Knowledge of these artistic conventions was likely passed from one group to the next, not on open trails, but through these labyrinthine underground corridors, connecting artists and shamans in a secret fellowship. These caves were not just temporary shelters, they were durable connection points used for thousands of years. Archaeologists find layers of artifacts, tools, and hearths from vastly different eras, indicating that generation after generation returned to the same subterranean chambers. This was not random visitation, it was a sustained tradition. A sacred symbol painted in one cave might be replicated in another system dozens of kilometers away, suggesting a shared mythological landscape that was mapped and reinforced underground. Recent advances in exploration technology have finally allowed us to follow these ancient pathways. Cavers equipped with modern gear are reaching chambers sealed for millennia, and what they are finding rewrites our understanding of prehistoric mobility. In a deep cavern in the Pyrenees, a team discovered a cache of distinctive seashells that could only have come from the Mediterranean coast, over 150 kilometers away. They were found alongside flint tools sourced from mountains in the opposite direction. This single hoard is a snapshot of a hidden exchange network, proving that people were regularly moving valued goods through the darkness, connecting the coast to the highlands via a secret geological corridor. These cave systems demonstrate a brilliant adaptation, turning the most imposing geological barriers into the most secure connectors. The journey through the absolute blackness of a cave was a ritual in itself, a transformative passage that purified the traveler and sanctified the knowledge or object being carried. From this world of silent stone and ancient paintings, our search for hidden corridors now ascends into the boundless realm above. A shard of volcanic glass could travel farther than the warrior who carried it. Across the ancient world, the trade in obsidian created a hidden web of connection, a corridor built on a single, sharp necessity. This was not a simple journey from a volcano to a village. It was a masterclass in secrecy, a relay race of trust designed to conceal the most valuable secret of all, the location of the source. Intermediary groups acted as buffers, trading the precious glass only with their immediate neighbors, never revealing the ultimate origin. A hunter in Anatolia might receive a blade crafted from obsidian that had passed through a dozen different hands, its volcanic birthplace a mystery lost somewhere to the east. The true map of these corridors is only visible in the distribution patterns we uncover today. Archaeologists find obsidian artifacts hundreds of kilometers from a known source, but not along a straight line. They appear in clusters, revealing a winding, almost illogical path deliberately chosen to bypass rival territories and keep the source volcano's location secure. This hidden network was a great equalizer of technology. The specific technique for pressure flaking, using a bone tool to pop off long, razor-sharp flakes from a core of obsidian, could spread from one culture to the next through these clandestine exchanges. A hunter-gatherer band in the Caucasus might perfect a new style of spear point, and within a few generations, that same design would appear in the toolkits of communities living near the Danube, a silent technological conversation conducted through the trade in stone. For decades, these connections were just educated guesses, but modern science has given us a key. Through chemical sourcing, we can now trace an obsidian blade back to the exact volcano that birthed it, often with a precision of just a few square meters. This has allowed researchers to map these hidden corridors with stunning accuracy, revealing a continent-spanning network that moved not just goods, but the very knowledge of how to shape the world. The persistence of a single, elegant tool form across vast geographical and cultural distances is the final proof. It suggests not occasional contact, but a sustained, regular dialogue through these concealed pathways, ensuring that the sharpest edge of survival was available to all. This hidden trade in the tools of survival finds a direct parallel in another vital network, the secret corridors that carried the knowledge of medicine itself. A healer in ancient China might have prepared a tea from the ephedra plant to treat a patient's labored breathing, while a world away, a Greek physician in the Mediterranean used the very same herb, known to him as ephedra, to ease the same suffering. This was no coincidence but the result of a hidden corridor. The medicinal plant exchange routes formed a secret lattice of healing knowledge, connecting herbalists, shamans, and physicians across continents. These practitioners were the guardians of a specialized science, and they moved their most potent secrets along pathways that traced the edges of ecosystems, through mountain passes and along river valleys where the plants themselves grew. A healer traveling from India to Persia would not simply carry dried leaves in a pouch. He carried the living knowledge of how to identify the plant at the correct season, which part to harvest, and how to prepare a precise dosage for a specific ailment. This information was shared in strict confidence, often through initiation rites or within family lineages, protecting the value of their art from becoming common knowledge. The corridors themselves were defined by the plants. A route might follow a specific altitude on a mountain range where a rare medicinal fungus was known to flourish, or it might connect a series of oases where a particular desert route could be found. This created a natural, self-concealing network. Only those who understood the language of the landscape, who could read the soil and the seasons, could navigate these healing pathways. The evidence for this clandestine exchange is written in the shared pharmacopoeias of cultures that had no official contact. Willow bark, a natural source of salicylic acid which is the foundation of aspirin, was used independently by ancient civilizations in Sumer, Egypt, and among Native American tribes to reduce fever and pain. The use of the poppy for pain relief appears in the records of Mesopotamia, and then centuries later in the practices of European herbalists. Recent pharmacological analysis has confirmed what the ancient healers knew through observation, that these plants contain active compounds with measurable, powerful effects on the human body. The hidden nature of these routes was their greatest strength. When empires fell into war or when new religions suppressed old practices, the knowledge of healing did not vanish. It simply retreated into the shadows, moving along these quiet corridors from one sanctuary to the next. A healing ritual for a stomach ailment, combining ginger and mint, could be preserved in a remote Himalayan village long after it had been forgotten in the royal courts where it originated. This ensured that the most vital, life-saving knowledge possessed a resilience that political power could never achieve. From these living pathways of leaf and root, our journey now turns to the corridors that carried something even more enduring, the stories that gave meaning to the world itself. A hero battling a serpentine monster appears in the myths of cultures separated by oceans. This recurring image was no accident, but the signature of a hidden corridor dedicated to the most powerful cargo of all stories. Mythology transmission pathways formed a clandestine network for the human imagination, connecting ritual specialists and storytellers who moved between sacred sites and royal courts. They carried the deep narratives of creation, the epic journeys of heroes, and the complex maps of the cosmos, sharing them in the hushed tones of initiation or the dramatic performance of a fireside tale. These narrative corridors operated on a principle of creative adaptation. A core story, like the Great Flood sent by disgruntled gods, would travel from Mesopotamia to the Greek world, but along the way, the names of the gods would change, the hero's boat would become a different vessel, and the reason for the divine punishment would be tailored to local values. This was not simple copying, it was a process of translation, ensuring the universal theme resonated within a specific cultural landscape. The evidence for these hidden routes is etched into the world's mythologies. The motif of a cosmic world tree connecting the underworld, the earth, and the heavens appears in Norse legends, in Siberian shamanic traditions, and in Mesoamerican creation stories. The archetypal hero's journey, with its call to adventure, supernatural aid, and final return, structures epic poems from ancient India to Celtic Ireland. For a long time, scholars debated whether these similarities pointed to a shared human psyche or to actual contact. Modern comparative mythology, by analyzing the precise sequencing of narrative elements, now suggests specific routes. The story of a dying and resurrecting god, for instance, likely moved from the eastern Mediterranean along hidden pathways into Europe, transforming subtly with each telling. The true genius of these corridors was their ability to foster both connection and distinct identity. Two neighboring cultures could share the fundamental structure of a creation from chaos myth, yet one would tell it of a god wrestling a water serpent from the primordial mud, while the other would speak of a bird diving into an endless ocean to bring up the first speck of land. This allowed for a shared understanding of the world's origins while maintaining a unique cultural voice. The storytellers who navigated these pathways were more than entertainers. They were the librarians of the human spirit, ensuring that the oldest and most profound questions continued to be asked and answered across the centuries. This silent, enduring conversation of archetypes and heroes finds its echo in another form of universal language, one composed not of words but of rhythm and melody. The same hidden corridors that carried myths also transmitted the foundational patterns of music, a specific 5-note scale, a rhythmic cycle based on the number 7, or the intricate design of a bronze bell could travel from the royal courts of China to the nomadic tribes of Central Asia. These musical ideas were exchanged not in written notation, but through the live, immersive experience of performance, passed from master musicians to their apprentices along trade routes and seasonal migration paths. The adaptation was constant and creative. A harp-like instrument from Egypt would inspire a similar design in Greece, but with a different number of strings and a new name, its sound woven into a completely different set of stories and rituals. This secret network ensured that music remained a living, breathing force, a hidden corridor of emotion that could cross any border and speak directly to the human heart. The very shape of a melody could be a secret handed down for generations. While empires traded in gold and soldiers, a separate, quieter exchange was happening among musicians and instrument makers, moving the technology of sound itself across the ancient world. A specific design for a flute, with its exact number of finger holes and its unique mouthpiece, could travel from the workshops of Mesopotamia to the ritual chambers of the Indus Valley, not as a commodity, but as a shared secret between initiated masters. These sonic corridors connected ritual specialists who understood that the right sound, produced by the right instrument, could bridge the gap between the human and the divine. The knowledge was protected with immense care. A luthier, a master of stringed instruments, would know the precise type of wood, the exact angle for the neck, and the specific tension for the gut strings to create a lyre capable of producing a tone that was considered sacred. This was not information to be sold in a marketplace. It was a spiritual technology passed from teacher to apprentice along hidden routes that traced the edges of the known world. The evidence for this clandestine network is written in the instruments themselves. Archaeologists find nearly identical forms of vertical flutes, carved from bone or reed, in ancient sites across China, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe. They share the same fundamental acoustic principles, the same spacing of tone holes, suggesting a shared understanding of scale and harmony that traveled far beyond the reach of any single empire. The horizontal harp, an instrument of breathtaking elegance, appears in the art of ancient Egypt and centuries later in the court music of Ireland. It is not that the Egyptians sailed to Ireland, but that the idea of the instrument, the blueprint for its complex frame and stringing, journeyed through a chain of cultures, each adding their own decorative flair while preserving the core technology that produced its celestial sound. Recent studies in organology, the science of instruments, have mapped these journeys with stunning clarity. By analyzing the materials, the construction techniques, and the wear patterns on ancient bone flutes, researchers can trace a path of influence. A specific method for tuning a drumhead, using heated stones to tighten the skin to a precise pitch, appears in both West African and Polynesian traditions, a technique too specific to have been invented independently. This points to a sustained, secret dialogue among the keepers of rhythm. The corridors did more than spread objects, they transmitted an entire philosophy of sound. The concept of a pentatonic scale, a five-note sequence that forms the backbone of musical traditions from Scotland to Japan, likely moved along these hidden pathways. A musician would learn the scale not as a theory, but as a series of finger placements on a flute or a pattern of plucked strings on a lyre, carrying the knowledge in their muscle memory. This ensured that a deeply human sense of harmony could resonate across continents, connecting people through a universal language that required no translation. The true purpose of these sonic corridors was to preserve a sacred dimension of life, separate from the noise of politics and commerce. Even when two kingdoms were at war, the musicians in their courts might still be part of the same invisible fellowship, linked by a shared understanding of how to build the instrument that could most perfectly express both sorrow and joy. This hidden resonance of shared sound finds its physical expression in the art of movement, where the human body itself becomes a living corridor for cultural memory. A sacred gesture could travel farther than any army. The 24th corridor was not paved with stone, but with the memory of the human body itself, a hidden network of ritual movement that connected temple complexes and ceremonial centers across the ancient world. These were the pathways of sacred dance and symbolic gesture, where choreography became a form of esoteric knowledge, passed from one initiated group to the next. A specific sequence of steps used to honor a harvest deity in Anatolia might reappear with subtle variations in a rite performed for a river goddess in the Indus Valley. The movements themselves were the message, a kinetic language understood by priests and shamans who could read the symbolism in a turn of the wrist or a pattern of footfalls. This was embodied knowledge carried in muscle memory and performed only in the sanctity of ritual space, making it invisible to the uninitiated and perfectly suited for clandestine travel. The corridors themselves were traced by the journeys of these ritual specialists. A master of ceremonies from a Mesopotamian ziggurat might travel to a distant city, not to trade goods, but to share a new processional dance designed to honor the journey of the sun. The knowledge was exchanged in the inner sanctums of temples, far from the public squares, ensuring that the core meaning of the movements remained pure and protected. Recent studies of ancient art and architecture have decoded this hidden network. Archaeologists comparing frescoes from Minoan Crete with carved reliefs from Egyptian temples have identified nearly identical depictions of ecstatic dancers, their arms raised in the same precise angle, their bodies arched in the same dynamic posture. These are not generic similarities, but the fossilized remains of a shared choreographic language. The spread of the dervish-like whirling dance, a technique for achieving spiritual transcendence, can be traced from Central Asia across the Middle East and into North Africa, moving along these secret kinetic highways. The true genius of these pathways was their capacity for both connection and cultural distinction. A community might adopt the fundamental pattern of a sacred circle dance from a distant land, but they would infuse it with their own local symbolism, perhaps changing the direction of the turn or incorporating gestures specific to their ancestral spirits. This allowed for a profound unity of form across vast distances, while still preserving a unique cultural voice. The ritual movement corridors ensured that the most profound human experiences, those of devotion, celebration, and connection to the cosmos, could be shared and refined across civilizations. From these silent pathways of gesture and step, we find another universal language of connection, one carved onto game boards and cast into dice. A king in Mesopotamia and a pharaoh in Egypt might have faced the same symbolic challenge across their game boards. The 25th hidden corridor was woven from the movement of ancient strategy games, a clandestine network that connected royal courts and elite trading centers. Games like the royal game of Senet, and Mehen were not mere pastimes. They were complex systems of knowledge, their boards serving as symbolic maps of the cosmos and the soul's journey. The actual boards and intricately carved pieces traveled along hidden routes, passed between aristocratic circles who understood their surface-level entertainment value. Yet the deeper spiritual and cosmological meanings, the secret knowledge encoded in the rules and the path of play, were often concealed from outsiders, protected by the initiated. The hidden nature of these ludic corridors is starkly revealed by the distribution of specific game types. An almost identical board for the game of 58 holes appears in the ruins of a Mesopotamian palace and, centuries later, in a tomb in the Levant, despite a profound lack of evidence for any other direct contact between those two specific communities. This suggests a relay of knowledge where the game was passed from one elite group to a neighboring one, its ultimate origin fading into mystery with each handoff. These pathways demonstrate that intellectual traditions could travel through channels completely separate from bulk economic exchange. A merchant might carry spices and textiles on the main trade route, while his patron, a local chieftain, received a new game board through a separate, more discreet corridor, a gift from a distant king seeking favor. The games themselves were vehicles for sophisticated concepts, the royal game of with its spiral track and specific dice throws, embedded early mathematical probability. Senet, a race game from ancient Egypt, was a literal simulation of the soul's journey through the underworld, its squares representing different challenges and deities. This was gaming technology, a way to model complex systems of fate, morality, and the cosmos. Recent archaeology has finally begun to map these hidden diffusion routes with stunning clarity. The discovery of a Senet board carved into the stone of a copper mine in the Sinai Desert, far from the Nile Valley, was a revelation. It was not in a royal tomb, but in a place of industry, suggesting that the game and its accompanying beliefs traveled with Egyptian overseers along a specialized corridor dedicated to resource extraction. The persistence of similar game structures is the final proof. The core mechanic of a race game, moving pieces along a track toward a goal based on the roll of dice or cast of lots, appears independently from India to Ireland. This is not a case of universal invention, but of a continuous, low-level exchange through these specialized corridors, allowing a fundamental idea to be adapted and reinvented across millennia. These board game routes were a silent conversation between power, philosophy, and play. This hidden exchange of rules and measured movement finds its logical extension in the next great secret network, the corridors that standardize the world itself through measures and weights. A perfect stone block in Egypt could fit seamlessly beside one in a Mesopotamian temple, not by chance, but through a shared secret language of measure. The 26th hidden corridor was built from numbers, a clandestine network that moved the very standards of measurement between ancient civilizations. This was the metrological corridor, where knowledge of length, volume, and weight traveled along specialized pathways connecting merchants, architects, and royal administrators. The exchange was often deliberately obscured, with the underlying mathematical principles guarded as closely as any trade secret. A merchant from the Indus Valley might adopt a specific weight standard used in Mesopotamian ports to facilitate trade, learning the physical weight of a shekel without ever understanding the complex sexagesimal counting system that gave it birth. The physical tokens of these measures, the polished stone weights and finely carved cubit rods, were passed from hand to trusted hand. The evidence for this hidden network is written in the stones themselves. The precise dimensions of the Egyptian royal cubit appear, almost magically, in the foundational plans of structures in the distant Levant and Crete. How could this be when these cultures used entirely different languages and numerical notation? The answer lies in a corridor of practical knowledge, where a master builder from Egypt could travel to a foreign court, his cubit rod in his toolkit, and share the standard with local architects who then replicated it in their own local materials. Recent metrological studies have uncovered these surprising connections, revealing that the measurement foot used in ancient Greece shares a startling common origin with the foot measure used in megalithic Britain, two cultures separated by thousands of years and kilometers. This was not a coincidence, but the ghost of a hidden corridor, a pathway of practical geometry that allowed for the construction of massive, stable structures across the ancient world. The corridors ensured that a ship's cargo of grain measured in one port could be reliably assessed in another, building the trust necessary for long-distance trade to flourish. This silent, quantitative network wove a hidden layer of predictability across the ancient world, allowing for cooperation and construction on a colossal scale. From these invisible pathways of number and rule, our journey now turns to the corridors that measured something even more elusive, the passage of time itself. The rhythm of the seasons was a secret shared across continents. The 27th corridor was woven from time itself, a hidden network for exchanging calendrical knowledge that connected ancient astronomers, priests, and agricultural planners. While a farmer in Egypt watched for the star Sirius to herald the Nile's flood, a priest in Mesoamerica tracked the precise movements of Venus, and a court scholar in China calculated the exact date of the winter solstice. These specialists, separated by vast distances and distinct cultures, were part of a silent conversation, sharing the complex systems they used to track celestial cycles and organize human life. The actual methods, the intricate mathematical calculations and precise observational techniques were often concealed, protected as sacred and powerful knowledge. The pathways themselves were traveled by a specialized class of individuals, initiates who carried this information not on scrolls, but in their memories, exchanged in the inner courts of temples and royal observatories far from public view. The evidence for this clandestine exchange is written in the calendars they left behind. The surprising similarity between the 18-month solar calendar of the Celts in Western Europe and certain calendrical structures used in ancient India cannot be a simple coincidence. Both systems share a specific approach to dividing the year and inserting intercalary days, a leap year concept that required sophisticated astronomical understanding. This suggests a hidden intellectual corridor, a slow, deliberate sharing of structural principles that allowed different cultures to solve the same fundamental problem, synchronizing their human calendars with the immutable clockwork of the heavens. These temporal corridors were the ultimate coordination tool. The spread of an accurate, shared calendar enabled farmers from Mesopotamia to the Andes to plant their crops at the optimal moment, creating food security on a continental scale. It allowed for the precise timing of religious festivals, so that rituals honoring the sun god could be performed simultaneously across a kingdom, reinforcing a shared spiritual identity. It even made possible consistent historical record-keeping, allowing dynasties to mark the reigns of kings and the passage of eras with a common measure of time. The hidden nature of these pathways ensured that the power of prediction remained with the specialist class, but the benefits of that prediction flowed out to entire civilizations. Recent comparative studies have illuminated these connections with stunning clarity. By analyzing the structural bones of ancient calendars from Babylon, China, and Mesoamerica, researchers have found shared underlying principles for reconciling the lunar month with the solar year, a mathematical puzzle that each culture solved in remarkably parallel ways. The persistence of a specific 5-day period added to the end of a year, a feature found in both Egyptian and Mesoamerican systems, points to more than independent genius. It hints at a continuous, low-level exchange of ideas through these secret temporal corridors. This proves that one of humanity's most fundamental scientific pursuits, the quest to master time, was a collective endeavor, its progress moving silently along hidden pathways that connected the world's greatest minds. From these invisible rivers of measured time, our search for connection now turns to a corridor built from a more vivid and tangible element, the very pigments that colored the ancient world. The deepest secrets of the ancient world were written in color. A specific shade of violet derived from a rare sea snail could adorn a priestess in Minoan Crete, while a world away, a similar hue colored the sacred robes of a Phoenician king. This was not a coincidence, but the signature of a hidden corridor. The pigment and dye trade routes formed a clandestine network connecting artists, dit houses, and ritual specialists, who moved the very technology of color across civilizations while fiercely protecting their chemical secrets. The true value was not in the pigment itself, but in the guarded knowledge of its creation. The process for extracting Tyrian purple from the murex snail was a masterpiece of putrid alchemy, requiring thousands of mollusks and a precise, multi-day fermentation to produce a single gram of dye. This information was a state secret, passed along specialized pathways that deliberately bypassed public markets. A master dyer from Sidon might share the first stage of the process with a trusted colleague in Cyprus, who would then complete the final, most critical steps in isolation, ensuring no single person outside the core guild possessed the complete formula. The hidden nature of these chromatic corridors is starkly revealed by the sudden appearance of specific, complex colors in regions with no access to the raw materials. Egyptian blue, a vibrant frit made by heating sand, copper, and natron to a precise temperature, appears in the wall paintings of Pompeii and the decorative arts of Celtic Britain. How did this knowledge cross the Mediterranean and move north beyond the Alps? It traveled not with common merchants, but with initiated artisans, members of a hidden fellowship who carried the recipe in their memory, sharing it only within the sanctity of their workshops. Recent chemical analysis has become a time machine for tracing these routes. Using X-ray fluorescence on ancient artworks, scientists have identified the unique elemental fingerprint of lapis lazuli from a single mine in Afghanistan on murals in Mycenaean Greece and in the ink of Tibetan manuscripts. This brilliant blue stone did not travel a straight line. It moved through a winding, secret relay, its ultimate source obscured by every intermediary to protect the immense value of the trade. The persistence of color symbolism is the final proof of this continuous, clandestine exchange. The association of a specific red ochre with life and power appears simultaneously in the burial rites of the American Southwest and in the ceremonial body paint of Australian Aboriginal cultures, separated by an entire ocean. This points to a deep, ancient network where the meaning of color was as mobile as its physical substance. These hidden chromatic pathways ensured that the most powerful visual language of the ancient world, the language of sacred and royal color, could speak consistently across any border. This secret trade in the very substance of beauty now draws our focus to the silent, massive corridors that move the bones of the earth itself. A building could speak a secret language understood only by its creators. The 29th corridor was etched not on any map, but in the very bones of ancient structures, a hidden network for sharing architectural templates. Master builders, engineers, and ritual specialists moved between distant construction sites, carrying the profound secrets of geometry, proportion, and structural integrity. They exchanged this knowledge not in public forums, but in the hushed confines of royal workshops and temple lodges, ensuring that the power to raise monumental architecture remained a guarded mystery. The true evidence of these corridors lies not in identical buildings, but in the shared invisible logic beneath different styles. A pyramid in Egypt and a stepped temple in Mesoamerica might use entirely different stones and serve different gods, yet both could be built upon the same sacred geometric ratio, a precise mathematical relationship governing the slope of their sides. This shared principle traveled along hidden pathways, allowing builders to adapt a universal truth to their local materials and spiritual needs. The corridors enabled the spread of revolutionary engineering solutions. The concept of the corbelled arch, where each stone layer slightly overlaps the one below until they meet at the top, appeared almost simultaneously in Mycenaean tombs, Maya palaces, and Scottish brocks. This was not a case of universal genius, but of a specific technical idea moving through a clandestine network of builders. Even the knowledge of how to construct buildings that could withstand earthquakes traveled from the seismic zones of the eastern Mediterranean to the shaking lands of the Indus Valley, passed from one engineer to the next as a life-saving secret. Recent architectural analysis has peeled back the surface to reveal these hidden connections. Sophisticated laser scans of ancient monuments have uncovered startling parallels. The precise proportional system used to design the Parthenon in Greece, based on the golden ratio, is found in the foundational plans of certain Egyptian temples built centuries earlier. How could this be? The answer is a corridor of practical geometry, where a traveling architect carried a set of proportional rules in his mind, a living blueprint that could be applied to any sacred structure anywhere. The persistence of specific column designs is the final proof. The distinctive lotus-shaped column capital, a symbol of rebirth, appears in the architecture of ancient Egypt and then, centuries later, in a modified form in the pillar halls of distant India. This was not an invasion of style, but a slow, deliberate seepage of a symbolic and structural idea through these hidden technical corridors. They wove a web of silent collaboration across the ancient world, ensuring that the most stable and sacred forms could be replicated, allowing humanity to build towards the heavens with a shared, secret understanding. This silent conversation of stone and geometry brings us to the 30th and final corridor, the ultimate hidden pathway that connected the ancient world. The final hidden corridor was mapped not on the Earth but in the stars themselves. Across the ancient world, a clandestine network connected the minds of sky watchers, a silent collaboration that spanned deserts and oceans. These were the astronomical corridors, where the most precise knowledge of celestial motion was exchanged between temple priests, royal astrologers, and long-distance navigators. The shared goal was universal: to predict the seasons, to understand the will of the gods written in the heavens, and to navigate the trackless sea. Yet the methods, the intricate mathematical formulas, and the precise observational techniques were often closely guarded secrets passed only between initiated specialists. A Babylonian astronomer might possess a complex formula for predicting lunar eclipses, a calculation of immense political and religious power. This knowledge would travel along hidden pathways to the scholars of ancient India, not as a written theorem, but as a practical set of rules, its underlying logic concealed to protect its value. The evidence for this network is written in the alignment of stones and the pages of star catalogues. The specific orientation of a temple in Egypt to the rising of the star Sirius, an event that heralded the Nile's flood, is mirrored in the solar alignments of a desert observatory in the American Southwest, designed to mark the summer solstice. How could such a specific focus on solar and stellar cycles appear in cultures with no known historical contact? The answer lies in these celestial corridors, where the core problem of synchronizing human time with cosmic time was solved through a slow, deliberate exchange of structural principles. These pathways enabled the spread of revolutionary tools for understanding the cosmos. Detailed stellar catalogues mapping the positions of hundreds of stars moved from the libraries of Mesopotamia to the scholars of Greece. Techniques for tracking the erratic path of the planets, those wanderers against the fixed backdrop of the night sky, were refined and shared along these routes. Most impressively, methods for predicting eclipses, those terrifying moments when the sun or moon vanished, gave rulers and priests the ultimate power, the ability to proclaim they could command the heavens themselves. For a long time, the parallels in ancient astronomy were seen as independent genius, but modern comparative analysis has revealed a different story. By examining clay tablets from Babylon, scrolls from China, and later texts from the Maya, researchers have identified shared observational priorities. Different cultures, using completely different number systems and mythological frameworks, were nonetheless focusing on the same specific celestial cycles, the same complex planetary conjunctions, and developing eerily similar prediction methods. This cannot be coincidence. It is the signature of a continuous clandestine dialogue, a hidden republic of astronomers who shared their findings across the ages. The persistence of a specific reference to the Pleiades star cluster, used to mark the agricultural new year in both the Mediterranean and the Andes, is the final proof of this enduring connection. These celestial corridors demonstrate that the most objective science, the pure observation of the physical universe, created bonds that transcended language, faith, and empire. The human drive to comprehend the cosmos built its own invisible infrastructure, a network that turned the entire sky into a single, shared text. Having traced these 30 hidden corridors that secretly connected the ancient world, a profound pattern emerges from the shadows. Taken together, these 30 hidden corridors weave a single, stunning tapestry. The ancient world was not a collection of lonely islands, but a vibrant, humming network of constant exchange. This clandestine system operated in perfect parallel to the official empires and sanctioned trade routes, a deeper, more resilient layer of human connection. It explains the great historical puzzles, the near-identical medical practices appearing in Egypt and China, the shared architectural principles in pyramids an ocean apart, and the uncannily similar mythologies told beneath different stars. These were not coincidences, but the logical outcome of a world in quiet, continuous conversation. The real magic lies in how these pathways were forged. They represent humanity's brilliant adaptation to its own divisions. When political borders hardened or when deserts and mountains rose as impossible barriers, human ingenuity simply found another way. It learned to navigate by the stars in a trackless desert, to read secret freshwater springs on the seafloor, and to encode entire libraries of knowledge into the patterns of a woven textile or the knots of a string. This was not a world where isolation was the default. For most of human history, connection was the rule. Isolation was the rare and difficult exception, often a temporary condition imposed by conflict or catastrophe. The sheer persistence of these hidden networks across thousands of years points to their essential role. They fulfilled a deep, abiding human need that official channels could never satisfy, the need for pure, unfiltered exchange. They allowed a healing ritual to travel farther than an army, a musical scale to cross a continent without a single conquest, and a new way of smelting metal to spread without a royal decree. This transforms our view of the past entirely. We can no longer see ancient peoples as isolated communities staring into their own campfires. We must now recognize them as active participants in a vast, intricate web, constantly sending and receiving the ideas that would shape all of our futures. This hidden lattice of connection invites us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about how civilization truly developed, reminding us that the most profound progress often travels in silence, just beneath the surface of history. These 30 hidden corridors reveal a world far more connected than our history books ever described. We have traveled from subterranean water tunnels to celestial pathways in the night sky, uncovering a clandestine lattice that moved the lifeblood of civilization itself. This was not a world of isolated cultures, but a vibrant, humming network of constant, quiet exchange. Goods, ideas, and technologies flowed through these channels, proving that the human drive for connection has always been stronger than any wall, desert, or ocean. The true ingenuity lies in how these pathways were forged, not through conquest, but through adaptation, turning every apparent barrier into a new opportunity for contact. This ancient system of invisible threads wove together the foundations of our modern world, allowing medical knowledge to bypass plagues, architectural secrets to cross continents, and spiritual beliefs to find new homes far from their origins. The legacy of these corridors is all around us today. Our digital networks, our global supply chains, even the very fabric of our interconnected cultures, are simply the latest manifestation of this timeless human impulse. We now face our own challenges with globalization and cultural exchange, and the lessons of these ancient networks have never been more relevant. They teach us that connection and diversity are not opposing forces, but two sides of the same coin. They show us that resilience comes not from building higher walls, but from weaving stronger, more adaptable networks. These hidden corridors invite us to look beyond the surface of our own world, to search for the subtle connections that bind us across time and space. What secret pathways are we building today that future generations will one day uncover? We would love to hear which of these ancient networks fascinated you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments and join us as we continue to explore the hidden dimensions of our shared past.